Good morning, folks. Hopefully, you in this room can hear me okay. And we're trying something a little different today. We're going to record this session online so that people that aren't in Sunday school or aren't able to attend can get started on the Red Letter Challenge sometime this week at their leisure. We've already had some small group discussion in here, and we've already done our prayer request and prayer. But we wanted to jump in to, before we actually crack the book, if you will, I'd like to pose a couple questions. So, first question is, this is for this group in here. How do people know you're saved?
Your actions.
How do they know? I'm going to say unsaved. I'm going to try to talk loud, so apologize. How do they know that you're a Christian? Is it you are saved? Your actions. What separates you? When you're out in the community, what makes you different?
Your everyday walk.
Your everyday walk.
Or still your actions.
Yeah, comes back to actions again. Yeah, still actions.
Yeah, reactions.
Yeah, reaction's a good thing because it's how you
Actions and
handle.
reactions.
Yeah, it's how you handle situations.
Yeah,
You know, acts of kindness. You know, I have to be real careful with my temperament. You know, I'm one of them guys like to fly off the handle sometimes, and I have to be real careful with that kind of thing because it's really not a good testimony when you actually get really mad.
Well, when you sit down to their level,
Yeah.
and then you start
Because
saying things.
they start thinking of you as being hypocritical, and
Yeah.
that's usually where you get in trouble because if you're out doing the things that other people are doing that are not saved, and you start doing those same things, you know,
You're validating
they
it.
validate as being a hypocrite.
Yeah, it's like my brother at the party drinking a beer, and his pastor asked him that Sunday, he said, "Well, did you have a good time at the party?" He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you're on Facebook drinking a beer." He said, "I had one beer to fit in." Somebody's always watching. He said, "Well, you know, your testimony now is in the toilet."
Yeah.
And he said, "I was trying to fit in, be nice." I said, "Just tell him, get you a Coke."
Without drinking.
I said, "You're running with the wrong crowd."
Good point. Does the community know we're different?
Right.
Do they see it? Do they think that we're any different than them?
A lot of times they use that as an excuse not to come to church. Well, I know old Scott, I know Bull, on Saturday night, they're both down at Spanky's having a drink, or they're...
Well, I didn't. The bull showed me where that place was.
But that's the reason, I seen them fishing Sunday morning, they wasn't in church.
Mm-hmm.
He was up on the lake fishing, so
Yeah.
why should I go to church?
Yeah.
It's you got your witness, you have to be really careful that you don't let, that what you do, your action doesn't cause someone else to stumble.
Right. So, what are we really bad at? Who do we associate with the most?
The people that are like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't reach out to people that are not like us.
We come to this place 1, 2, 3, 4 times a week. We meet with the people that are like us. We get our batteries recharged, and we think that maybe doing things is helping, right? When, meanwhile, when you look at Christ, I don't think Christ would be in church 3-4 times a week doing some of the things we do, right? He'd be out with the people. He always went to people that were in need. He didn't separate himself from anyone. So just a little bit about the challenge. So if you've got your book, you've got this little marker here. And all this here is a reminder that on day 1, which will be the 11th, you've read your book and you've done the assignment that was in your book, and you can check it off. So there's only, for the first week, there's only 6, not 7, because tomorrow will be the first day. And in the books, there's some really, it's not a lot, but it is going to be thought provoking. So I'm just going to give one example, and I real quickly, when we talk about, well, let me change gears just a little bit. Have you ever done this type of challenge before? Have you ever done a church-wide study that everybody participated in?
No.
There's been a couple here, right? What's the one that Dion you talk about once in a while?
Faith program.
Yeah, the faith program. Did anybody here besides Dion go through it? I did not go through it, but I will say that I noticed the change in the people that did go through it.
We had a huge change in our church during that time too,
Right.
and I think that everybody was on fire. It was almost like a revival sort of thing, because it started out, we only had a few teams, and I think we ended up with something like 20 or 30 teams before it's all said and done. We had to have people, it was just, and for us to meet and for us to go through the process of the faith program, and it was so encouraging that Christians were going out and knocking on doors and being disciples for Christ. And, and we touched a lot of people, and our church grew during that process, and a lot of people were coming that were not believers. And but I think it got to the point to where a lot of people look at us as being religious and not Christians. They look at us as being more of a structure and not of somebody that cares about them. But when you go out and you actually do communicate with them, and you do show love, and you're showing kindness and anything that you can actually offer to help them out, and that's some of the stuff that we were doing.
Right.
And our church really saw an increase in people coming.
And they see that you care and you're willing to put actions behind your words.
Exactly.
So, well, this lesson really today is just an introduction, and it does ask that we make a kind of a little bit of a pledge that people try to show up on time and really share from their heart. Except for today, well, the video camera's on, everything that's said is confidential, right? But if you want to talk confidentially, anyone in this group is willing to listen and share as well. Just be honest as we go through this. Don't try to fix anyone. Don't try to preach a sermon, and don't give unsolicited advice. Let's just all learn about it together. And when you're sharing, mainly share about yourself, not about other people. It's really easy for us to talk about other folks, right? And then just trust God as we go through this study for 40 days. There's 5 different sections. Being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. And with that, I'm going to try to start this video.
So quite a few years ago, I read a book by these Christian authors, and they actually interviewed non-Christians and asked them, what do you think of Jesus followers? What words come to mind? And some of the very first words that came to mind for Christians, for people that follow Jesus, were judgmental, hypocritical, and divisive. And I've never been content with that being the description of Jesus followers. Jesus calls us to represent Him into this world. And the frustrating thing is those words are not just missing the mark by a little bit, they're completely opposite of what Jesus stood for and what He was all about. In fact, one of the first words I think of when I think of Jesus is the word grace. Jesus gives us grace, which is a free gift that none of us deserve. Judgment, which is what we're known for, is literally the opposite by definition. It's getting exactly what you do deserve. We're known for our hypocrisy. Jesus is known for good works. We're known for our division. Jesus is known for unifying us. And so, how can we not only be missing the mark, but be completely the opposite of what Jesus has called us to be? I've never been content with that, and that's why I started to look back at the red letters of Jesus, you know, those red words in your Bible, and I started to identify, what does Jesus ask his followers to do? And I found some patterns that were in there, and what I want to invite you to come alongside of is I want to challenge you to put the words of Jesus into practice in your life over the next 40 days. That's what this red letter challenge is all about. Putting what Christ says into practice. And I believe that when we do that, we will change people's perception of who Jesus is, and will change the story that we're telling of what a great Savior he really is. So I remember when I was 9 years old, I loved basketball, and I loved watching the Dream Team at the Olympics. It was Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and they were an amazing team. And so going into the Olympics that year, it wasn't who's going to win the gold. Everybody knew the Americans were going to win. It was who's going to win silver or bronze. They won by 44 points a game average, and so they won the gold medal. In the 2004 Athens Olympics, I remember another story about an American shooter named Matthew Emmons, and he was, like the Dream Team, far and away better than the rest of the field. And it got to the point where he was so dominant that we got to the last shots, and all he needed to do to secure the gold medal was simply hit the target anywhere on the page to win. So it turns out that when Matthew Emmons was approaching his last shots at the Olympics, he was focusing on his breathing. Because as a shooter, that's what makes the difference, is you want to slow that heart rate down as much as possible so that in between those beats per minute, you are shooting at just the right time. And so he was so focused on that, and sure enough, bullseye, 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 hit the target 3 times, right where he needed to. Except there was one problem. Matthew Emmons crossfired. He was supposed to hit the target over here, and he hit the target over here. He was focused on the wrong target, and he lost it all. And I feel like as followers of Jesus, many times we're so focused and we have good intentions, but we're missing the mark when it comes to what Jesus is asking us to do. And the Red Letter Challenge is going to help you identify what it is that we are called to do as his followers. What's amazing about the Matt Emmons story is you can literally have the greatest marksman in the world, but if you don't know what to focus on, none of it matters. D.L. Moody once said that our greatest fear shouldn't be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't matter. And I think that's the problem with followers of Jesus. We don't really know what we're shooting at. We don't know what to aim for. And so we can look at what people say about us, and we can look at and say, we're not judgmental, we're not hypocritical, we're not divisive. Or what we can say is, you know what, maybe we haven't done things right all the time. And maybe we can do better at this. And after all that Jesus has done for me, I want to be the greatest follower I can. I want to be the greatest representation of who he is. And so I need to change. We all need to change. And that's what the Red Letter Challenge is all about. It's about helping you identify what we can do as followers of Jesus to help change the story we're telling of who Jesus is. The part of the problem is people grab something from over here and try it, and then grab something from over here and try it. But I started thinking, Jesus has all the answers. And so let's just go back to what Jesus said. And as I did that, I noticed 5 main principles. Let's call them 5 main targets of what we as his followers can shoot for. And so in the first week of the Red Letter Challenge, we're going to introduce you to those 5 main targets. And then every week following, we're going to give you one of those targets. And so the first one we're going to give you is this target of being with Christ. How important it is to actually spend time with him in his word and to pray earnestly, and to fast and to take a Sabbath and really rest in who he is and what he's done for us. After we've been with Jesus, we're going to learn about his forgiveness. How can we not when we spend time with Jesus? And so we're going to learn how to be forgiven of everything that we've done and how then we can give that forgiveness to others. After we've been forgiven, man, it makes total sense that we need to go. We need to serve. We need to meet needs in our community. And so we're going to talk about what it means to truly be servants of Jesus. And after we serve, it's amazing how many times Jesus talked about giving. I believe it's impossible to be a stingy Christian, so we're going to take a look at what it means to be a truly generous person. And then we're going to close it up by talking about what it means to go with the message of Jesus, that we are his eyewitnesses and we get to tell people the good news that Jesus loved them, that Jesus died for them, and that Jesus has grace for them. And so I hope that you will join us on the next 40 days for the Red Letter Challenge. I believe that no matter who you are, if you've been a long-time Christian and you're feeling stale in your faith, if you are a brand new Christian, or if you're just wrestling with who Jesus is, I believe that by putting his words into practice, you will find the life that you were made for.
Well, what do you think? It sounds like we're going to be on quite a journey. Some of the things that he talked about Christians being judgmental. The other thing, just to mention though, what keeps us from getting more engaged? What keeps us from stepping out and
Fear,
fear of what?
our comfort zone.
Comfort zone. Yep.
Yeah.
Some people probably think they're not good enough. Some people think, well, I'll do that as soon as I get my life in order, right? Some people, like you talked about, feel like maybe you're unequipped or unprepared for it. And what have I called those things in the past in here? I call them growth experiences, right? It's like little things like the deacon candidates when they got up and give their testimony. You know that they were not comfortable standing in front of those people, and that was a growth experience for each one of them. And when you do stuff like that, it just gets a little bit easier every time. And the thing is, you're not, when you go through it, especially this challenge, we're not alone, right? The example that I use is my wife taught Sunday school forever, and one day she was going to be out. She taught third grade, and we were living in Nebraska. I'm telling you, I had a panic attack. I thought, I got to be with third graders for a full hour, and they're just me. So I bought a dozen donuts, and that was 15 minutes of the hour right there with the kids eating them donuts, you know. And I was sweating the whole time I was in there, thinking, man, I wish I was anywhere but here. But what it did was it made me more confident in myself, little by little, and you know, eventually I went to teach the young adults. I taught like 6th and 7th grade for a long time, then I taught the young adults for a long time, and now I'm fortunate to be leading this group of good people. And he did touch on something about us being judgmental, and that kind of goes along with our first question. But do you think you're judgmental?
I think it's human nature to be judgmental.
It is, isn't it? I'm going to give you an example that happened to me yesterday. It was 4:30 in the morning. I was getting gas at the Shell station on my way to meet my daughter and son-in-law to go duck hunting, and a guy pulled in on the other side of the pump for me in an old beat-up Chevy truck pulling a trailer with a boat that looked like it had been through a war on the back. And we struck up a conversation about some of the current events. And I prejudged him. When I first saw him, I prejudged him. And then when the words started coming out of his mouth, I realized I couldn't have been any more wrong about this guy, right? He was well educated. He was well spoken. He had good thoughts, and he had similar goals to what I had, but I had already prejudged him. And I think I think we all do that, right? And maybe that's sometimes why your mom always said first appearances are important, right?
I've tried to turn over a new leaf a few years ago and give everybody 100 points when they come in, and let them, instead of judging them as being, you know, like say appearance and all, we'll find out about them before I make a final judgment, because I was the same way. You know, I looked the way people appeared.